Welcome to today's Collegiate Conversations session, sponsored by the American Marketing Association with support from the Roland School of Business at Point Park University. The American Marketing Association Pittsburgh Chapter is the essential community for marketers in the region. No other organization provides more ways for marketers and academics to connect with the people and resources they need to be successful. Excited to welcome you to today's amazing event. So you want to work in marketing? We have a fantastic panel who will share with you their experiences in getting and keeping a marketing position. And I want to make sure again that we thank our sponsor, the Roland School of Business at Point Park University. So let's bring up our panel. And as we begin, keep in mind, and for those of you who are in the audience, many of you are marketers or future marketers, marketing encompasses creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offers that have value. This broad definition makes space for a variety of marketing positions and opportunities, from digital to sales to agency and beyond. A complex labor market, the Great Resignation, as it's being called, technological advances, virtual selling. With so much change and uncertainty, how can you position yourself for career success? Salesforce's annual State of Marketing report, released just this past August, found that half of marketing leaders changed their marketing strategy in the last year. 44% had completely changed their tactics and their marketing mix to reach customers, and 85% stated that KPIs were dramatically changing in importance or completely changed. At the same time, very few marketers felt they had the training and skills they need to perform under rapidly changing dynamics. Only 36% agreed that the training they were receiving was helping them achieve success, and only 39% had access to data analytics training options. So, how can you prepare for a career in marketing? In this session, you'll get to learn how to get and keep a marketing-related position with RJ Thompson, who is Director of Digital Marketing for the University of Pittsburgh's Katz Graduate School of Business. He's also creative strategist for Plus Public, an award-winning marketing and graphic design group, and he's incoming president of the AMA Pittsburgh. You'll learn from Katie Bennett, who's Assistant Director for Career Management at the University of Pittsburgh, and she's a former account executive at Ogilvy and Mather. You'll learn from Brian Whittington, who is founder and CEO of sales recruiting and consulting company EBS Growth. You'll learn from Kelly Commodore, who's president and CEO of K2 Creative and PR. You'll learn from Shannon Gregg, PhD, who is president of Cloud Adoption Solutions, a Salesforce consultancy. And you'll learn from Sabrina Tatalias, who is an analytics consultant at Bounteous. So let's get started. And for those of you who are in the audience, as you have questions, please feel free to use the chat and we will get to those questions. I see that RJ is already using the chat and he has some positions open. So please, students and professionals who are seeking career change, take a look at those links. Also, if you are here in the audience, feel free to put your name in there and introduce yourself, and maybe even put your LinkedIn profile address so people can connect with each other on LinkedIn, and this can be a good networking opportunity as well. Well, RJ, let's get started with you. Since we just mentioned you and you're already actively using the chat, you began your career with a focus on design. And you moved through development, not-for-profit, faculty positions, and startups. Can you share with us your journey from design to marketing?
Yeah, I've seen like all the dimensions. I actually started as a designer when I was 11 years old. So I've been a creative professional for a majority of my life. And when I started at that young age, design's the gateway drug, everybody. it gets you into so many things. So I've often maintained that design and marketing are really one and the same. They're just two different aspects of the same critical mission. And for me, it was important that while I'm design heavy on the skill side, I need to balance that out with an equal footing in marketing. And as I evolved through my career, I always tried to affix some type of marketing strategy, marketing skill, some type of marketing output to the work that I was doing, because it would ultimately enrich the solutions. So, I started at that young age, and then after high school, I migrated into college and eventually entrepreneurship and starting my own company. And that's when I realized that as an entrepreneur, you really have to be a jack of all trades and hopefully a master of all. And I took a really hard look at integrating marketing, its practices and its principles into every single thing that I was doing. Even though my companies were primarily design agencies, they were also marketing. So here I am now working at CATS and promoting the MBA programs there and recruiting students, but I'm also doing the work with Plus Public and branding communities and essentially acting as the chief marketing officer of small municipalities that are looking to revitalize their local economy. I can't do great design work without marketing, and I can't do great marketing work without design. So, in my mid 20s, I needed to make sure that both of those things worked in tandem and created great solutions. And the rest is history.
Well, I think we might both argue that marketing is part of everything we do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that you can hear clearly from RJ's story, that trained as a designer, he found that marketing was a direction that was really important. And those skills were critical to moving forward. And it's really amazing, RJ, the kind of work that you're doing, especially the things you're doing even in community.
But it's Celia, I do.
Hey, Krista.
Hello.
There's always
Krista's
one.
joining in.
Sorry, I'm going to be listening because I'm traveling. So I'm just going to listen in, okay?
Not a problem at all. Not a problem. You were unmuted and I thought maybe you had a question.
No. I'm so sorry. I didn't need to be unmuted. I apologize.
No problem at all. Well, we talked about RJ's work at moving from design into marketing and the work that he's doing currently at Pitt. So Katie, let's bring you into the discussion because you're one of RJ's colleagues at the CATS Graduate School of Business. You began your journey a little differently. You started out in the agency world at one of the top agencies, Ogilvy and Mather. How did you come to land at Pitt in career management? And maybe you could even tell us a little bit about how you got started at Ogilvy and Mather.
Yeah, my career makes some sense when you hear the story of it, I think. But essentially, I went to undergraduate at Duquesne University. I know there are some Dukes on the call, so glad that you're all here. And I just started applying to some agency positions because I had a feeling that I wanted to do lots of different account work. I didn't want to just do sort of one job every day. If an HR recruiter is good, they will get you into the right position. I ended up applying to a job that had already been filled and then was contacted by them because another assistant account executive position opened up that actually more closely aligned with my skill sets. I had been interning at PPG for a while and a position on their corporate team opened up. And with my portfolio that I had put together, the writing that I had been doing for PPG was a match for the types of clients that they would be working on in the professional services firms. It was one of the only jobs I applied to in New York City, and I ended up getting it because of the PPG stuff, but also because I was an English major. And in my writing samples, there was a lot of critical analysis and kind of threading different storylines, right? So there were multiple sort of justifications for writing skills, both in PR and then in English. agency life, I feel like I did 3 years, but it was a full career in marketing, to be totally honest. I did an IPO. I helped to do CES, which is the big consumer electronics show, press releases, crisis communications, basically anything that you could want to do in PR, I did in 3 years, I think. But while I was there, I also got really involved in HR and professional development and working with other folks who were at the assistant account executive and account executive level, and really just loved having those conversations and really thinking about like our career trajectories. What were we doing? What were the skills that we were developing? And I had a call with one of my mentors. He was one of the assistant deans at Duquesne at the time. And I said, you know, Jason, like, how do I become you? Like, how do I become somebody who's helping students to figure these pathways out? And he recommended I get my master's degree at in higher education. And that's sort of the pathway that I took to get to this position, which is advising marketing students. So I am the assistant director for career management, but I advise MBA and Master of Science students who are actually pursuing degrees in marketing and pursuing careers in marketing. So I leverage my industry knowledge and the skill sets that I developed in Ogilvy to help students figure out their skill sets as well, and the ways that they're telling their stories, because ultimately a good career advisor is somebody who can help students thread their stories, can help them to figure out the skills that they have developed and then that match to the job descriptions that they're trying to apply to, right? And to be honest, career advising is a lot of marketing too. I have to get my students to show up to events, right? So I have to figure out what's our social strategy, what are our 7 points of communication, what's going to resonate with different audiences, what's not going to resonate with different audiences. So in a lot of ways, marketing, like kind of RJ was saying, is everything. Because if I am not reaching out to my students in ways that are going to connect with them, then the message is kind of lost in translation, right? So that's the sort of short version. And if anybody has time, I can give a longer version on a different call.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that really helps to illustrate both your story and RJ's, that the journey isn't always a straight and narrow path, that there are lots of curves, you know, and lots of interesting both obstacles and opportunities that show up on a career journey. And that's something for students to keep in mind and entry-level professionals to keep in mind. And I also see, Katie, that you've had connections between kind of crossing over that marketing and HR piece. And I argue that they are closely aligned when you think about recruitment marketing and employer branding, that there's a key connection between marketing and HR on the human capital side, right? So critical to what we do.
I actually worked on Deloitte's HR account, which is funny that you bring that up, because a lot of like how I engage with content stems from the way that they were telling their stories about human capital solutions. And like everything comes down to what's going to make this message resonate with the right folks, right? And I think that more than anything is what we're here to do, right? Is just make it resonate with the right folks.
Absolutely. Think about that message and that audience and how you make that connection and lead to action, right? Lead them to some kind of action. Fantastic. Well, Brian, you founded, and entrepreneurship was mentioned earlier, but you founded a successful sales and business development firm. And your career, again, you've had kind of a long and winding road. It spanned the military, real estate, sales training, sales management, entrepreneurship. Can you share your journey with us?
Sure. So it's been one of fits of starts and stops, right? But in reality, like everyone, yet you accidentally get into sales. So I think I'm the only salesperson here, so forgive me for that. But you accidentally get into sales, and in the old days, and I might get, this is heresy in this group, but in the old days, I didn't really see the need for marketing because so much of it was marketing pieces and graphics and pretty pictures. And whenever I was in sales, I'm like, this isn't helping at all. But now with the intersection between sales and marketing is really turned into smarketing, where you're so integrated in the need of de-siloing. That's really where I spend my time. So I hire customer facing roles, right? So how do you engage with customers, that communication, like you were talking about, that call to action, getting people to take action. I mean, that's what leadership is. That's what sales is. That's what marketing is getting people to change their behavior, which is in reality leadership teaching. So that's what I get to do all day. You know, I'm a student of the game. So my biggest encouragement to everybody here is learn, learn, and learn, because as soon as you think you figured it out, it changes like that. So make sure that you constantly stay growth minded and coachable and learning. And with that, you'll have a ton of fun. My daughter is just about to get into this. She's going to Bobby Moe. So she's starting down this same career path. So we'll see how this goes.
Fantastic. Yeah, bring the family right along the journey with you. Kelly, you're also an entrepreneur, as Brian is, and starting a firm, and RJ, in fact. You recently founded a marketing-focused agency while simultaneously overseeing the development of a book focused on entrepreneurship and resilience after you moved through positions in sales and business development, finance, and outreach. So I'd love to hear more about your journey too.
The journey, the keyword is pivot. I have done a lot of pivoting, as Brian had said, and actually I can relate to a lot of what RJ and Katie said also. My journey started in marketing back in 2004 when I was hired as a part-time customer service representative at the Pittsburgh Business Times. That position, I stayed there for 11 years, had 3, career changes while I was in that position. And to me, the most valuable part of marketing is networking, which I learned from working for the Pittsburgh Business Times, because as most of you probably know, they put on 1 million networking events a year, right? In normal times, maybe before COVID. Because really, what is networking? It's marketing yourself. It's marketing to others. It's making connections. It's making people feel valued and comfortable and saying, hey, you know what? You need something? I know someone who does that, and making that connection for people. So to me, that's where my love of marketing started. So we're going to fast forward many, many years to the beginning of the pandemic, when I was working for a different marketing firm and got laid off. And when you're laid off and you're not working for the first time in decades, you have a lot of time to think, right? So all these thoughts are going through my head. And I thought, you know what, if I don't do this now, start my own company, I'm never going to do it. And that's when I came up with K2 Creative and PR. And somehow that morphed into me creating an anthology with 20 other women who all wrote a different chapter of the book. It's called 21. And they're very enlightening, very, very great stories about business resilience. And a few of us have had the honor to meet with Doreen and Sandy and talk with Point Park students before, and some other folks. But, the pivot is the main thing. Just because things aren't going the way you expected, or things don't happen just so, roll with it. You have to learn to pivot. You have to learn to lean on your network. I can't stress to you enough how important it is to have a really strong network of people behind you for guidance, to give you thoughts and opinions, but to also make referrals for you too. So I really think that, to me, networking and marketing truly fit together like a puzzle piece. It's so important.
It really is critical. And I love the connection you made between marketing yourself and networking. And that's why, I would argue that marketing is a life skill. We all use it. That foundation of influence and persuasion are so critical to us personally, professionally, and organizationally.
Yeah.
And, RJ made a comment in the chat that the overarching theme is that marketers are entrepreneurs, so start a company. And we actually have yet more evidence of that with Shannon. You have extensive sales experience. And in fact, you did just that. You founded a sales technology and optimization firm. And you also continue to share your expertise. You speak at global conferences. You recently completed a doctoral degree. I don't know if you ever sleep, Shannon, but I would love to know more about your journey.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I went to Pitt and got a degree in English literature, which led to proposals. So I was working in a corporation doing sales proposals. And that is such a great place to learn a little bit about how the entire organization works. I was inside of a sales operations group, and I ended up managing that sales operations group. And a lot of what happens in revenue operations, which ties, just like Brian was saying, marketing and sales together, is understanding all of the analytics. So how many sales meetings have we had? How many proposals have we put out? What campaigns have we done that have influenced interest in our company? And what are the conversion rates? And how can we fix that? And so what that led to for me was a very deep interest in the technology that helped to track and report on those analytics. And for me, that is Salesforce.com. So I, in that time, did my MBA at Point Park, which I really enjoyed, and found out that everything that I thought was compartmentalized at organizations actually does all tie back to marketing. So product development, engineering, delivery, finance, everything really does tie back to that, because everything you do is a pitch. You're pitching yourself, you're pitching your ideas, you're pitching your company, it all ties in there. And the company that I was working for got acquired. So we were acquired by a company that was private equity backed. And I learned even more about making great presentations with data to back it up. And so that systemization was something that was really appealing to me. And I started speaking at really large conferences where people would say, oh, what you've done with your company, can you help my company with that? And so just like RJ noted, out of that, a company was born. And so I founded my company in 2018, finished my PhD in 2020, and I do pick up 1 or 2 classes a semester, as many as Dr. Sletty puts on my plate, on principles of marketing and professional selling at Point Park University.
Well, we are thrilled to have you working with us and sharing your expertise with students and our next generation of marketers. And I did not know you started out in proposal writing. That's something else that we have in common, because that's actually how I got started in my marketing and sales career, was in proposal writing for a financial services organization. And it was an amazing way to learn a lot of information about the organization that then allowed me to build my sales and marketing career. Yeah.
It's deep, and I heard Katie talk about writing as well. And so writing is such a critical skill that you can bring to marketing. So if you love writing, marketing is a great place for you.
Yeah, and I think about even content management. Brian had mentioned in the chat, content marketing and writing and design are both parts of that. So they're important skill sets for marketers. Well, Sabrina, we haven't spoken with you yet, and you are the most recent college graduate of our panelists. So we're excited to have you with us today. You moved directly into a marketing analytics position, and I know a few things about your college background. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with you, and you were very, very active. You started initiatives, you led organizations, you competed in marketing and technology-focused competitions and won. So can you tell us a bit about your journey and, particularly that transition from college to career?
Yes. So the short story for leading up to college is that my entire high school career, I was very focused on every single business and marketing class my school offered, every single engineering. And that led me to going into college initially thinking I wanted to do industrial engineering. As you just heard, I'm now digital marketing. So it's a really interesting switch. I think that really led to me always having a passion for data and what you could do with data to enhance different tasks, whether it's with different ads you're running, SEO for search engine optimization, how you can improve your website, or really use any kind of data to make something better. And that natural instinct is that marketing and anything technology or computer science goes very well together. So going into college, I went to Point Park University for information technology with a minor in digital marketing. So I actually just graduated this past December. But along the ride, as Professor Saletti said, is that I was very active in both high school, college, any type of opportunity I found to learn or grow in my career, I took advantage of it. And I think that the best way to describe my career path is that I'm someone very calculated and I like to plan out everything, but there's a few moments that I take that leap of faith for an opportunity that emerges. The best way to really put that is that around my junior year, so right around when COVID hit, actually, I got picked for a Highmark Health internship doing database management. And then the exact same day, I got a call back from where I'm at currently, Bounteous, for another internship doing analytics consulting. So really crazy. I thought that whole time in college, I was going to go into something IT related, but I still always liked marketing and business. I took that leap of faith into Bounteous because it's a company I've known about for years, back before they were Lunametrics and were acquired. And along the ride, you know, during college, there really isn't, if you're going for that route now, you're doing the digital marketing side. Most colleges really don't offer a whole mess of digital marketing courses. There might be 2 or 3, but you know, they're not extensive teaching you the newest and greatest of Google Analytics. They're not teaching you Tag Manager. You're not getting always really in-depth client experience with different organizations. And it's such a changing and evolving space to get into, where, you know, every week I'm getting updates on new platform updates of any kind. It's very client facing because I'm in the agency setting. So it's definitely really fun. If you're a student who currently loves data, you love always being on your toes, learning new things, then I think agency settings for you, consulting's probably for you. And I think the big piece of advice is just be very open to new opportunities and finding things for yourself or creating them if you have that chance.
That's amazing advice, Sabrina, being open to new opportunities. And I love that you talked about taking that leap of faith, because as Brian mentioned, learning doesn't stop. And, you know, Shannon suggests that marketing innovates fast and never rests. And we know that to be true, especially on the technology side. Can we even keep up? It sometimes seems difficult to be aware of and then implement the technologies that are out there. It is fast evolving, Kelly, absolutely. And so now we've had a chance to hear from each of our panelists and hear a little bit about the journey. So I'd love to make this more of a discussion about some of the things that are impacting our careers, and particularly, well, let's start with just marketing in general, because that certainly impacts our careers and the choices that we make and the education that we might need. We know that marketplace trends impact and influence marketing. So let's talk about some of the key trends and how they might connect to the skills and competencies that employers desire. So when students are thinking about getting that first job, you know, what is it that they should have in mind? What are some of the things they should be building? So let's open it up to our panel. What are some of the trends that are having this profound effect on marketing that will impact students in their career choices?
Something that Sabrina was saying really resonated with me as related to like the data components, because I think, you know, Shannon and I and RJ and I were talking about writing. Sabrina's talking a lot about data. And I think that like in a good marketer or someone who's really effective can do both of those things, right? And I think that like the more that I see students who are well-rounded and maybe not as specialized, especially like when you're pursuing that graduate degree, that's making them a little bit more competitive in a very competitive marketplace, right? So like the more that a student is not only able to extract data and use data and leverage data, but also tell somebody who doesn't know what that data says, what the data is saying and why that's important, and then is driving decisions with that data through sort of like a compelling story. Having both of those skill sets to me is one of the most important sort of trends that I've seen over my time at CATS.
What an important and valuable way to connect them, that it's understanding the data, but it's not enough just to be able to work with and understand it. You have to be able to tell the story of the data.
To supplement that that thought, one thing that I've been experiencing is the concept of the T-shaped marketer. So there's a lot of demand for creative professionals, for marketers, to be able to know a little bit about everything, right? And to be able to Katie's point, utilize that information and make correct and informed decisions. But the idea of the T-shaped marketer, getting a broad range of experience and then kind of finding your area of specialty and then building depth is important. So while you may be a specialist in one critical area like data analytics, you can also talk the talk in areas of content marketing, budgeting, et cetera, et cetera. So I found that there's this need for marketers to have basically have some familiarity and enough experience in those various areas to make a very holistic sort of professional. And that's a lot of pressure, especially on an entry level or early career person to build all those skills out. But ideally, you find yourself on a good team with a good mentor, and they're going to sort of organically push you into those decisions so you can start to build out that range and then that depth. So that's one thing that I've been noticing with my students, with the CAD students, and then also as a hiring manager, I'm looking to create those opportunities for others in that context.
The first two words I thought of, Doreen, was flexibility and creativeness, to make sure that you're constantly flexible as to, and again, I'm gonna use the word again, pivot. I'm killing that word today. But it's true, you need to be able to pivot. You need to be able to have that flexibility to do different things and learn different things. And you also have to use your creativity. You got to dig really deep and to be able to stand out against the competition, as far as if you're applying for a position, or if you get a job as a marketer and you're, competing against another company for a contract for a job. It's that creativity that you have to just kind of let things sit, let them simmer, let them marinate. Don't answer something too quickly. Don't give a knee-jerk reaction. Really let your creativity flow before you make any kind of major decisions or put anything out there for people to read. I've learned that the hard way sometimes.
Yeah, reflection can be a really important skill to build. Instead of just reacting, take that time to reflect, and that does allow you, then opens you up to creativity.
I would add to that. If we look at Chris Walker, what Sabrina was saying, Chris Walker talks about from Refine Labs, how there's a real challenge to get attribution, right? To give attribution and to be able to understand the metrics. And I think that's something that is unique to you, Sabrina, because your engineering technology background, that is critical, both from a marketing perspective and if you get into a sales perspective, as we start to marry this rev ops, because those numbers will tell a story, which drives you to needing to understand or have a basis of business acumen. I think that goes to a little bit about what you were saying, RJ, where with that business acumen, then you can start to ask the right questions to better understand those numbers, and those stories then help you to know what to do and allow you to make those decisions. So some skills that I would really encourage those to think about is, one, how do you create questioning strategies, which really comes from active learning, listening skill sets to be able to ask the right questions from that. And then to do that with how fast the marketplace is changing, it gets into a growth mindset. It's always needed to grow, coach, and be mentored. Are you coachable? Are you willing to learn? When you're interviewing, one of the things that I'm always asking my people is, hey, what is the last thing that you studied? What is the last thing that you learned? And I can't tell you how many people say, oh, I read this book. Great. When? In 1962, right? A little, exaggeration there, but I mean, they haven't read anything since school, for goodness sakes. So constantly stay up with that learning. And then the last thing is the ability to be able to tell stories, to clearly articulate these really challenging concepts in a way that is whimsical and people will enjoy, because that's going to allow you to stand out. Too many people are just texting and they can't communicate well. Your ability to stand out is really going to become from your storytelling and being able to engage people. And that comes from an active listening and really asking great questions. So those are some thoughts that come to my mind.
And I think these are all things for us to consider, and for students to consider as they're looking at building a bucket of experiences that they'll be able to bring with them, and then thinking about how they communicate and share that with potential employers moving forward. And, since we're talking about students and potential employers, are there other specific recommendations you might have, our panelists, based on your expertise, of how students might be able to best prepare for that first job, thinking about what employers are looking for in this particular historical moment, or how might students differentiate themselves? What are some of the things maybe you aren't seeing that you wish you were seeing?
I want to pull from something that Sabrina said earlier, which is we're not necessarily critically enabling our students with the concept of technology. We're seeing it, it's burgeoning, it's coming out in small sections, in different coursework that you're doing, but the MarTech landscape has over 8,000 applications, and marketers are meant to understand what's the difference between these these applications and their categories, right? And so one of the things that I would tell everybody who's interested in a career in marketing is get comfy with technology, get comfortable with the technology that you're using, whether it's something as small as a social media poster like Buffer or Hootsuite, whether it's something as large as a CRM system like Salesforce or HubSpot, or it's something that's really niche that's inside of a content management system or knowledge base. But understanding the technology landscape is really going to help you differentiate yourself, because what we're seeing now is there is a collision between what we would have traditionally thought as an IT role and what we're seeing in marketing. So all marketers need to be very comfortable and well versed in technology. So if you can get yourself a little bit ahead of that curve, it will make you extremely competitive on the market.
And there may be situations where students need to go beyond just what they're doing in their university classrooms, because it's likely not possible, given the confines of the semester structure, that you're going to be able to be exposed to everything you need to learn just within, that class. So we need to move beyond that.
So something I wanted to hit on is that's kind of what happened to me. My college does have digital marketing class, but that Google Analytics is now outdated. It's now moving to Google Analytics 4, which is now going to deprecate the old version. So if you're currently using Google Analytics in school, I'd highly recommend already trying to learn GA4, because that's what all these digital marketing roles are going to have to switch to, because next summer is the new version. And that impacts all the other Google products, any of these other MarTech products. So it's super important. I think that's kind of what happened to me, though, is I actually self-taught myself Google Analytics. So when I even had that class and it came out, I could basically teach the class at that point. So being able to learn what you need to do to get to your potential career goal that you want for post-grad is super vital. If you see on LinkedIn some jobs that you're interested in as a current student that you think, okay, when I graduate, I want to apply to these jobs, look at the positions and see what they actually have listed for you to have as a skill. If you don't currently have them, you have a year, if not more, to get that skill. That way you could stand out. Because if it's not being taught, you have the time to, say, get that certificate, get some freelance experience with a client doing it. So you have the time now to make these learning opportunities happen for you, versus when you're already in a career, it's a little bit harder because you're already working full time, then it's all at nighttime. So that's just my recommendation as a recent college grad, but definitely that's my big point. Just start learning now if you need to get any skills in the tech space.
So
definitely.
I want to throw in here, I'm going to divert away from technology for a moment. One of the things that is really important for me, and I think speaking in general for employers, is I want to know how you think, how you solve problems, what your problem solving methodology is. Being very blunt and frank about it, I can hire anybody to moderate my software and solve problems through my software, but I need people that contrast my thinking. And I think employers are measuring problem solving at a higher level now, because problems are more complex and they aren't always like a specific content solution or technology solution. I want to see how your brain works, and I want your brain to think differently than mine, because that will strengthen the marketing team and the marketing output. So, students in the room, if you've got a portfolio and you happen to write down notes or sketch ideas out, include that stuff in there, because that is visual proof on how you solve problems. And that could be a game changer, because your competitors may not be showing any of that. They may not even be aware that showing how they solve problems is something that they should do. So please keep that in mind.
To RJ's point, diverse skill sets, diverse perspectives, diverse experiences, and I think about it in the context of social identities, but I also think about it in the context of thinking maybe you were going to go into engineering and then deciding that you don't want to go into engineering and maybe going to go into marketing. Having, there are definitely spaces in the field for folks who know they want to go into marketing, pursue marketing from beginning to end, and then end up with a wonderful marketing position, right? But to RJ's point, if you meet 75% of the criteria on a job description, like most of the candidates who get interviewed probably meet that criteria too, right? So getting an interview, like that means that it essentially means you can do the job, right? So what are you going to do in that interview, or what are you going to say, or what are you going to tell somebody that's going to make you the person that's going to round their team out, right? Like what's the different perspective you bring? What's the unique thing that you bring? Personal anecdote, when I got that job at Ogilvy, the person who hired me eventually ended up telling me that one of the papers I had written on an 18th century poem and the analysis that I had done was one of the reasons she wanted to hire me. Turns out she had a master's degree in like Shakespeare. Didn't know that at the time, right? But like this random thing that I kept in my portfolio because it was a paper I had worked on that was not part of my ASPCA portfolio that I had done for like my nonprofit marketing class. Like, no, it was this random poetry analysis that I just kind of threw in there, but that helped her to understand how I did critical analysis. And in corporate PR, critical analysis and like taking these big concepts that folks don't understand and distilling them into press release language is a really critical skill set. So, you know, if you've got the interview, be confident that you can do that job and go into the interview thinking through the things that are going to maybe be a little bit different than what the other folks bring to the table.
Oh, that's fantastic. Really keeping that information and using that information in a way that's you don't always know how it's going to ultimately be valuable.
A little spin-off to what Katie said about keeping that paper in her portfolio. And I know that most of you know this, but I'm turning my mom hat on now, even though I'm an empty nester and they're both out of the house. Clean up your social media profiles for the love of all things good. If you're looking for a job, please clean up your social media profiles. And you all know what I mean by that. Keep it clean, keep it wholesome, watch your photos, and make sure that you can accept tags, because I've seen people get tagged in things that they really don't want people to see on the outside world. So make sure that you're approving all of your tags on Facebook. That's the mom hat. I'm taking it off now.
But that is good advice, because the social media profiles really build our own personal brand, and employers do sometimes search and they want to know a little bit more about who we are as people, and that helps them predict how we'll be as employees. And our HR colleagues, I'm sure, have much more expertise in that area, but our personal brand really does impact our ability to get hired. Well, you know, we've been talking quite a bit about getting hired. So let's shift directions for just a bit, and let's start to think about what it takes to stay hired. So once you get that entry-level job, or you get that marketing position, and you're really excited about that, right? What does it take to hold on to it? What are employers expecting of marketers once they've entered the door?
I'll tell you one thing, and I'll take off of what RJ was saying earlier, is the biggest thing that we're looking for is somebody that's going to solve problems. If you're waiting for your title to say that you can then lead or problem solve, that's too late. What we're looking for is for you to grow and get things done before you're asked. If you're proactive, getting problems out of the way, identify them. And so there's a great book out there. It's really rather quite old now, but it's called The 1 Minute Manager. And the one takeaway from that is I don't accept complaining. And here's what complaining is: identifying a problem without bringing a solution. So be sure to innovate for your company, identify those problems, and then give a suggestion or two, or say, hey, listen, I have this, I've identified this as a problem. I'm not 100% sure how to solve it. Can we work through it together, right? As long as you're willing to do something like that, step into that. And I think if you're able to do the problem solving and point out with suggestions, you're going to do really well and move up through the ranks.
So RJ, I know you have a couple of positions open right now. Once you get somebody in there, what do you do? What do they need to do to stay?
So, yeah, great question. So the context of my positions are that I'm specifically hiring recent graduates. Like, this is your first job. And there's a lot of responsibility, self-imposed responsibility on me to make sure that I am a good mentor for the person in that role, so that essentially I train them up well enough that they could leave if they needed to. So I personally want to participate and grow that person's capabilities so that they'll be successful later. To Brian's point, the proactivity of and taking initiative is incredibly important. That shows autonomy, self-reliance, leadership. It communicates so many values and characteristics without literally saying them. You know, the proof is in the pudding there, so to speak. That's incredibly important. I also want someone that's ambitious. I'm an ambitious person. If you know me well, you know I'm maybe too ambitious, / competitive. Nevertheless, I want someone that is ambitious and hungry to provide for themselves the career that they want through the position that they're in. So many times, and I hope many of you will agree with me, is that so many times you look at the job description and then you get that job and then you find out that the job description doesn't totally match. And that's because ideally the employer wants you to shape and mold the job around your strengths. And that's a great opportunity. And in order to do that, you have to be proactive and ambitious to do that. And I can't say that enough. I'll scream it from the mountaintops if I have to, in that very convoluted way.
Well, this is great because we're getting some general almost competencies, you know, and it's not, as you've heard, students, it's not just about having a particular skill. It's about being able to problem solve, as Brian and RJ have mentioned, and being proactive. And Brian in the chat just mentioned interdependence, right? And realize that you're doing things on your own, but you also have to work with others. Shannon, you've done a lot of hiring. What are some things that make a difference for you in terms of keeping somebody in or somebody being able to stay in a position?
It is so infrequent that you will work at a place where people don't complain about silos, right? There's the silo of finance, there's the silo of marketing. And one of the things that I will tell you that is a common thread throughout the best employees that I've ever worked with is they have no problem saying, let me cross over the aisle and talk to my friends in a different department. And so not being afraid to say, maybe I don't understand finance, but I need to understand finance so I can understand the ROI of this campaign, so I can understand how finance is budgeting, so I know what to ask for in my budget next year for marketing. And so the ability to say, I'm willing to go beyond, and where RJ said, you shape that job description, go beyond what your job description says and be intellectually curious forever and try to find out what's going on. What would make your job easier, dear person in accounting, if I did something differently in marketing? How can I approach my job differently to make your job easier? And so that concept of being a silo buster is one that will make you an absolute star-studded employee.
Kelly, you've also, and thanks Shannon, because that's fantastic. And silos are definitely a challenge in many workplaces. Kelly, you've also done some hiring and have worked with a variety of different groups and a variety of different organizations. So what would you add?
The most hiring that I ever did was in a past life a few years ago when I was in banking. I did a 180 and, you know, yes, it was still marketing and yes, it was still promoting and visibility and all that. But I had a lot of turnover in the banking industry. I managed 2 different bank branches, and it part of it was the industry and part of it was because in the beginning, I truly did not know how to hire. I thought, oh, wow, he or she is smiling the whole time. Oh, they seem like such nice people. They'll learn what I need to teach them. They'll learn to work on the line. They'll learn to get along with people. You know, they don't seem like they have a great attitude about things, but that'll change once I get my hands on them. That is not the case. I think to find somebody who is the whole package when you're hiring is really, really hard. But I think that there are silos, as Shannon said, because you have the personality, you have the experience, you have the know-how. So I think you need to pick out which one of those sections is your strongest, which one of those silos, and really work with that during your interview. Be willing to learn new skills if you don't have them. And somebody said, and I forget who, I'm sorry, it might have been Katie, that, 75% of the job description, if you have that, go for it. Even if it's less than that, go for it anyways. Don't hold back. It doesn't hurt to have practice interviews. The more you interview and you get used to that process and you get used to talking about promoting and marketing yourself, the better you're going to do when that real interview comes along that is going to get you that job that you've been looking for. So don't be fearful. I mean, if you have 10%, I would say don't waste their time. But you have at least have 60% of what they're looking for. I just say go for it. The worst they can tell you is no.
Yeah, and no is not a terrible thing. And sometimes you can turn a no to a yes. So there's always that possibility too.
Yeah, and those are sometimes blessings because you might not have belonged there and it might not have been the right choice for you.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. And Katie, you've worked with a lot of different employers as they've done their hiring. So what do employers tell you when they have found somebody that they're really happy with? What is it about that candidate that stands out for them?
It's really like, this is going to sound cliche, but almost like a puzzle piece, right? So it's when, but it doesn't have to necessarily complete the whole picture, right? So it's somebody who's going to come in, who's going to fit the needs that they have at that very fundamental level that Kelly's talking about, right? Like that you meet those qualifications, but it's somebody who's going to stretch the team. It's because somebody who's going to push the team forward. I have rarely heard from recruiters that they want somebody in a position to maintain status quo, right? Like usually they're looking for somebody to take on a new project, or they're looking for somebody to not only take on, this area of business that needs to be taken care of, but also to innovate that area of business, right? It's this idea that like you are there to do the job, but you are there, like RJ was saying, to shape the job, and you're shaping the team and the vision and the culture. And it's like, those are the home runs, right? Those are the people who are making recruiters happy. They're making hiring managers happy. Coming in and only talking about the things in the job description and not like your ideas about what could potentially stretch this project that they have. That's gonna make a candidate who does have those ideas probably be more attractive. I think that one of the things you can really do is go in well-informed about, you can't know everything about a role or an organization before being there, but the more research that you've done, the more folks that you've talked to, the more ideas that you bring to the table. Like an interview is also almost like a pitch in a lot of ways for the folks who are agency. You're pitching yourself, you're pitching your skills, but you're also pitching your perspective. And I think those are the folks who are most sought after by recruiters.
I think the students in the audience can see from this discussion, well, not see, but hear from this discussion, that there are so many things beyond just the basic marketing skills that are critical to getting that first job and then to keeping that job once you are in place. And so those are things that hopefully will help shape you as you continue your learning and you build your resume and build your portfolio and build your personal brand as you move forward. We are coming towards the end of our discussion, so I want to try to get through maybe two more key questions for us to talk about. And one of them is, about upskilling. So students will have a particular set of skills when they apply for a job, but those skills aren't going to necessarily keep them in that job or allow them to move forward in that organization. So what are your recommendations for students who are thinking about continuing their skill building, their lifelong learning? How can they as marketers reskill and upskill? Are there some particular blogs you would recommend, some particular readings, books, training providers? I know that, I think it was Brian, you put LinkedIn Learning into the chat, and Sabrina suggested that LinkedIn Learning, getting the certificate is great, but then also look at how you can demonstrate that. So what are some other things that you're doing to keep current with marketing? What might be helpful for our students?
Oh, cool. So I'll go first. So if you're going anything in the digital marketing, digital analytics space, there's a Slack community, if you're familiar with the tool, and it's called Measure Slack. It's entirely free to join. And it's essentially all these different groups you could join in a forum base that's related to the industry. Some people there are freelancers, some are there just for getting questions answered because they're in a job. A lot of people at Bounteous were in there always messaging back and actually helping people in there. I think another thing that I'd recommend is that, you know, depending on what space you go in, honestly, just sometimes setting goals with your career coach or your boss is honestly the best thing. Even at my job currently, there's so much in the digital marketing and analytics space. I still don't know, and that's totally fine. So today, actually, I met with my boss and said, like, hey, I'm lacking skills in this one area. Can I be added to clients that have that particular area so I can actually get skills in it? And it was yes. So I think sometimes just as simple as just asking to get more work in an area you're unfamiliar with to learn, and then your work has the resources to help you get trained and learn it. That's probably just my big recommendation, and just joining different community groups that are related to your industry or niche that you're going to get into is always a good plus.
So to supplement that point, absolutely join a variety of different Slack communities, Discord communities. AMA Pittsburgh has a Slack community now. Please join. But for the students in the room, I want you to know up front that if you're looking for professional development funding, most of the time it is not available. So just walk into any sort of request to pay for a class or a program or something like that with your employer, expect a no on that. It's not always the case, but it seems like it's very common. Nevertheless, because of that, you have to take a more proactive approach to your own learning. And one suggestion I have, and the professors will appreciate this, is you essentially need to build out your own curriculum. What are the things that you want to learn, and the timeline within which you want to learn them? So essentially, you have to frame it as, if I were to get a master's degree, what would I want it in? And these are the things that I need to practice. So, you know, I'm very, very well into my career, and I'm still doing that. The good professional development folks, the lifelong learners, they're always learning. So always be making that curriculum for yourself. And there are a variety of tools online that you can use. Brian's mentioned LinkedIn Learning, amongst others. But I have something a bit more practical and very grounded. So when you're in the job, you're always going to be thinking about your career and perhaps what your next job is going to be. What are the things that you need to do to get you to the next job? So find a nonprofit or start a project where all the things that you want to learn, you have to do or can do for that project. So now you're skill building, plus you have a professional outcome that you can put into a portfolio and validate to the next employer or to your employer now for a promotion that you have those skills.
And I see the chat is just blowing up with suggestions from our panelists in various resources that you as students can use. So feel free while you're in this session to click on those links so that you can save some of those resources. We did get a question very quickly from Fabrizio about marketing, incorporating PPC, SEO, email, social media marketing, increase in need of those skills from employers. And I know we've talked a bit about digital marketing, something students should pay attention to, get skilled in. Head nods from our panelists. All right, fantastic, thank you. Well, we are just about out of time. So as we wrap up, I want to invite each of our panelists to share a final closing thought with our audience. So let's start with you, RJ. Key takeaway for the audience today.
Always be learning, never stop learning, be it self-taught or school learning. This industry changes every day. You got to stay on top of it, be ahead of the game.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's go to Katie.
I'll give you the advice that my assistant dean of students told me when I decided I wanted to pivot into higher education. Marketing skills and communication skills never go out of style. There are simply always going to be in demand. And if you are good at them, you will use them in every job that you have, whether your title is marketer or not.
Thanks so much. Important to remember. Brian, key takeaway.
I think one key takeaway is keep up your curiosity. That goes into the growth mindset, so you can always stay up. Things are changing so rapidly, and we're at a hyperinflection, right? A tipping point that you won't be able to keep up. So always learn, grow your learning abilities, and I think you'll be safe.
Thanks so much, Brian. Kelly.
I'm going to stick with my networking, because networking is marketing yourself, and you really need that strong background of having those people to lean on, to get advice from, and to make referrals for you, whether it's for a job, for a client. Just always be networking, and just be yourself. That's how you're going to get the right job, just by being yourself.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Shannon.
Unsurprisingly, I'm going to echo RJ and Brian, and I'm going to tell you that one of the things that you should do is be very intentional about the content you consume. So I use a formula that's 2 to 3. So I will consume 2 pieces of content that are going to further my knowledge in my field, whether it's a podcast or it's a book, and then I will consume 3 pieces of content that are just for fun, right? So before you sit in front of Netflix for many hours, think about the amount of content you're consuming, and whether it's furthering your skills or whether it's allowing you to relax.
Great advice, Shannon. Thanks so much. And Sabrina, key takeaway.
As a recent college grad, please get experience. It really breaks my heart seeing people go all throughout college not doing an internship, not doing a club, not doing anything except school. So you being here today is literally, if that's already like making you ahead of the game. So please take the final thought of just get some type of experience. Even if you have to create your own opportunity, that is perfectly okay. And if anything, that's going to already, again, set you apart of the crowd. So get experience.
Fantastic. So thank you to all of our panelists, to RJ, Katie, Brian, Kelly, Shannon, Sabrina. So happy that you took some time to be with us today to share your wisdom related to marketing careers, not just getting that job, but keeping that job. And I want to remind everyone that this session has been presented by the American Marketing Association Pittsburgh chapter. Students, you can get discounted student memberships with the AMA. You can also, with your student membership, you can bridge that and get a 1-year free membership as you move into that professional level position. So please do check that out. RJ is the incoming AMA president. Katie is a member of the AMA board. And if you have questions for them specifically, feel free to throw them into the chat. Check out amapittsburgh.org for information about the organization, volunteer opportunities, and future events. I'd also like to thank the Roland School of Business at Point Park University for sponsoring today's session. So thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
See ya.
Thanks so much.